All right. You know what it is? You know who it is? We're back. Today I'm closing the trifecta. I got Jordan Jiunta, Dr. Jordan Jiunta of Prescript, business partner to Jordan Shallow, which I had on not too long ago on the podcast. I'm really excited for this one. You're someone I've always wanted to talk to because I've listened to you a lot, but it's been a lot of Jordan Shallow lately, and I haven't heard a lot
Yeah,
from you. So always someone I'm interested in learning more from. So thank you for coming on.
yeah,
So
absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
yeah, I want to start off. I just want you to tell us about yourself. I want you to give us a little bit of insight into like your fitness journey and then kind of your career and where it's taking you up to this point.
Yeah, it's a lot. So I
Oh,
guess so currently, I mean, a big part of what I do right now is I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I work with a lot of athletes in terms of rehab and ways to optimize performance, I guess you could say. So athletes that aren't necessarily injured, but think that they could be better. A lot of strength athletes. With that, my other main thing, Prescript. As you know, RX Radio with Shallow and Killian, all that stuff. So we're doing a lot in the education space right now. My part in that is more geared towards the sport of Olympic weightlifting. So I've been coaching Olympic weightlifting for probably about 6 years now. Competing in the sport, I have a deep love for it. It's something that I really enjoy doing. I really enjoy kind of nerding out, geeking out, and coaching and teaching people about. So that's a big part of what I'm doing right now. Um, Kind of before and leading into all of this stuff, it's a lot of my interest in the strength and conditioning world started really young. My dad kind of exposed me to it. He was always into fitness and strength training and I guess more towards combat sports. He was big into like martial arts,
what do you
jujitsu.
do?
So he has like a third degree black belt in karate.
Oh wow.
He currently does Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Um, I'm not sure what color his belt is
Yeah.
in jiu-jitsu, but he's done it all. He ran marathons when he was younger.
Yeah.
He's the one that got me into strength training when I was probably like, I don't know, old enough to walk. And it's wrestling too. Wrestling was the big thing that kind of
Well,
runs in my
I
blood
thought you
and
said
my
you wrestled.
family.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said I thought I've heard you say you wrestled before.
Yeah, so I mean, really, it started in grade school all the way up through a little bit in college and Division 3 school, so not that big of a deal. But and then that led me into strength and conditioning through wrestling. So that was kind of my main sport. I played a little bit of baseball growing up, but I liked wrestling more, and even more than I liked wrestling, I liked the strength and conditioning for it. So I started probably serious like actual barbell in the gym workouts when I was probably about 12, almost 13 years old. And I just haven't left the gym since. And it kind of took me down all these roads. So after I got out of wrestling, I got into CrossFit. I did that. I competed in that for probably about 4 or 5 years. And that's how I discovered the sport of weightlifting outside of kind of in the strength and conditioning realm. It's more so you do power cleans and then you do like the powerlifting
Yeah.
movements.
Yeah.
So that's how I got an introduction into weightlifting. I think I snatched my first barbell when I was maybe 20 years old. So since then it's been kind of a continuous journey to learn more about the sport, to get better at it and to kind of share that knowledge with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that's so I think that a lot of people have that. I think that's how people come to CrossFit really is like they were athletes in one thing and then they transition into CrossFit for more of the competitive than anything else. And then it takes
Hmm.
them to like the rest of their life in the fitness world or whatever it is that happens. I know you were a very competitive CrossFitter, like, a very high level CrossFitter. So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit and then how that transition to weightlifting happened because, um, you talk to a lot of people who are in the space of CrossFit and make a transition, but like from someone like yourself who's a very high level CrossFitter, which he'll talk about, and having that experience it's always cool to hear that background.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. I got into CrossFit because I had just ever since growing up, I just had these competitive urges. That's why I wrestled. That's why, even just being in the gym was competition between me and like the people that I would work out with. I just had that drive, maybe maybe that ego, to just push it as far as I could and kind of continually test that and get better at that. So that's kind of what led me into CrossFit is largely due to my wrestling background because anyone who's been in the sport of wrestling, it's like, however long your match is, whether it's was it like 6 to 7 minutes, it's basically all out, like it's metabolic conditioning is
Yeah.
what it is. Like you get off the mat, you feel like your forearms are going to explode, like your heart rate's through the roof, you're going to be sore as fuck for like 3 days. It's all out metabolic conditioning, so it's not necessarily high end strength, though the strength helps, but it's more so like a strength endurance sport,
Yeah.
um, which I found very similar to a lot of the demands in CrossFit. So the feeling of doing a metcon or a wad or whatever you want to call it, it really took me back to that sensation of what it felt like to wrestle a match. And there's that competitive aspect of it. I had um, really good training partners when I got into CrossFit as a sport. So when I was competing in CrossFit, so it would be, literally you're just beating the shit out of yourself. You're just taking yourself as far as you can go within the confounds of whatever that workout might be. And you're just seeing who can endure more, you or the person next to you. So it's the part that I liked about it was the mental challenge and the mental fortitude it took to not only be good in a workout, but continually grow within the sport. And even back then, I was competing from 2014 to 2017, maybe, or like my competitive years.
Mhm.
Um, and and within that time, the sport was kind of continually changing and growing. So it was kind of a lot of unknown in terms of what to expect from the competition season. Um, so I kind of like that it kept me on my toes. It had a similar feel to the competition aspect than what I was comfortable with or what I've known from to be competition in terms of wrestling. And I was all I mean, I've never really been strong. Like
Mhm.
the guys at Pre-Script, like fucking Jordan and Stu will fucking bench press probably more than I'll ever squat. So fuck those guys. But I don't
That's not fair
like
though.
I'm
They're
yeah,
trees.
right. I'm 5'5", 170 pounds, like soaking wet. So with that, it's strong. It holds a very different meaning to me than it does to someone that's 6 foot tall, like 300 pounds.
Yeah.
So for me, the fact that I'm coming from like weight class sports and these sports where I'm matched up against people relative to my strength and size and like competing against anyone that can grab a barbell, it really pushed me outside of what I knew to be kind of the confines of what I was capable of in terms of strength training. Just because my strength had to be relative to my size when I wrestled, but in CrossFit, my strength had to be relative to the strongest guy on the floor.
Yeah.
So that was something that I really appreciated about it, and it kind of um, it put me outside of my comfort zone in what I thought I was capable of doing.
Was there a moment in like, because you went to regionals three times, right?
Yeah, I went actually 4 times. I went once on a team and then 3 times as an individual.
Okay. Was there ever a time you kind of like looked across and you're like, well, not like, I don't want to say like this wasn't for me, but you were like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, 'cause sometimes you go like, I've never been there, but like I know of people who have been there and like even where I was from. So I'm from New York and like I moved to Tennessee. And every year in Albany for the past 3 years, except for I think this past year, it was a Northeast regional. So it was like
Right.
Fraser, Katrin, and I was like, I
Yeah.
can't imagine. Like, and I think of this in other sports too. It's like you look across the floor and like LeBron's there, or like Matt Fraser's there, and you're just like, nah, I'm fucking good.
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest moment I had was like, I mean, I just told you my dimensions. I'm not a big
Yeah,
guy, but like I show up and I see everyone that's competing, and they're like CrossFitters in general. They're not huge dudes,
yeah.
but these dudes are like probably 5'8" to 5'10" on average, like 200 pounds. So like compared to me, that's like another half of my width. Because these guys are just stocky as fuck. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh shit, like I have to compete with these guys. But it wasn't like so I was in it was the NorCal regional at one point, and that turned into the California and then the West region. It kind of evolved over the time, but like the big dogs around here are like names that are known are like Josh Bridges, which is
Okay.
actually about the same size as me, but he's just dude. He's like his mental game's on another level. That
Yeah.
dude's fucking wild. Um, and there's like what's his name? Garrett Fisher. He's a pretty
Okay.
big dude. Um, like Neil Maddox was there at one point. That dude's
Oh, geez.
fucking yoked. Um, and like just these guys that are like the guys that I when I got into CrossFit, they're the ones that like I followed. They were on my Instagram feed.
Yeah.
So like it's at that point where like okay, I know who these people are, and I'm like I'm here to compete with them. So it was my attitude a lot of the time in competition with CrossFit was not necessarily one of um I don't belong here or high pressure, high expectations. It's more so like I'm fucking grateful to be here. Like this is dope. Like I'm the outlier in this pool of
Yeah.
candidates. And it's like, I don't know if I belong here, but I'm gonna have a good fucking time and I'm gonna see what I can do while I am here.
No, yeah, and like, and I definitely didn't like. I meant it in like that way because like sometimes no matter what, like like so I do jujitsu and like I had my first competition this past year, and like when you step in there and you just see some of the dudes that are like supposed to be in your weight class, and you're just like, damn,
Yeah.
that's scary. And like I can
Yeah,
only
that's
imagine because like you're in the highest level almost of the sport of CrossFit. So like those dudes, like the Josh Bridges, the Neil Maddoxes, and you just look across and you're just kind of like, yeah, I think I just want to stick to the weightlifting. Like it's not even worth doing all that stuff anymore. So that's awesome, and like it's cool hearing that perspective because, like I said, you don't hear that many people that have been, at least in like the CrossFit world, to that level that like have made the transition you have. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about that transition from CrossFit into weightlifting, kind of with like that same question. It was like, did you ever like when was that moment that where you were like, I just really want to focus on weightlifting?
Yeah, I think it was more of kind of a lifestyle decision than this moment of like I don't it wasn't like a pivotal thing or
Yeah, yeah,
anything, but I just got to the point where I was like I was burning the candle from like every single end between like what we are trying to do at Prescript, what I was trying to do. I run my own practice here too. I was coaching, still am coaching at the time. I just had a lot going on, and I've been in a relationship now for a long time, so it's just balancing all
recently
those
engaged, right?
variables. I just got engaged, yeah,
Yeah,
this
congrats. I
this
saw.
past year.
Yeah.
So thank you, yeah. So that worked out of all these things. um, but I was just, and I've always kind of been that way. Is that I'll just try and take on as much as I fit or as I possibly can, and working out along the way. And it really wasn't working out in most aspects. I was, you know, a lot of things were suffering at the expense of me spending time in the gym.
Yeah.
So it's, training at that level in CrossFit, anyone who's done it or tried to do it, you're doing 2 sessions a day, like 5 or 6 days a week. So and each session's like 2 hours. So that's like, what's that? 2 hours times. So that's 24 hours a week.
Yeah.
That's like, more than half of a full-time job. And then you add in the recovery, the 10 hours of sleep that I was forcing myself to get, the meal prep. Like you don't have time to be productive in other areas when you're training at that level. And so that's the other part of it, is training at the level I was at.
Yeah.
You know, I was sub elite, right? I'm not the best of the best. I'm a guy that's like trying to compete to be on the same floor as the people that are the best of the best. So at that level, it's not like you're making money off of it. It's not like you're making sponsorships. It's just like this cool hobby that takes over your entire life. So the ROI on it, just over time, it started to really diminish, and I kind of had this wake up call where I'm like, I can't do this forever. Like I need to focus on my business. I need to focus on what we're doing at Prescript. I need to focus on my relationships and all that other stuff. So the thing that, like I said, it's CrossFit challenged me um to push the limits in terms of how strong I could get to be able to compete within that sport. And in the process of doing that, I was hitting numbers like snatch and clean and jerk, that were on par with the national qualifying totals because of that.
Yeah.
So it kind of made for an easy transition that I can go from being relatively high level here to being relatively high level here. And the anyone that knows anything about weightlifting, it's like the golf of strength sports.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's all about finesse, and it's not necessarily about CrossFit, which is like just try hard and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more so like I want to make this movement pattern as flawless as possible. Um, so it's a lot more about um, just quality repetition. It's a lot more about learning the skill of the snatch and the clean and jerk. And that's something that I could, you know, you can, something as subjective as that, you can go down and you could learn your entire life and make these minor corrections and continually get better at.
Yeah.
So it gave me kind of a less objective way to channel these competitive urges, while still being a way to compete in a strength sport. And I always kind of gravitated towards the strength stuff. I like back squats, snatches, clean and jerks have always been some of my favorite lifts.
Mhm.
So it just kind of really fit the things that I enjoy doing, and it shed a lot of the extra stuff that I didn't really enjoy doing. Like I had to do like 45-minute row interval workouts, or like an hour of running like once every week for when I was training for CrossFit. And I fucking hate that stuff, dude. Like I fucking hate running. That's why I have a car.
Yeah.
Um so so it's like, oh wait, I get to do the stuff that I like, and I don't have to do the stuff that I don't like, and I can still be like somewhat competitive, and I still really enjoy what I'm doing, and it allows me all this extra time and energy that I can now channel into other avenues that might have been lacking because I was spending so much time training for this thing that I'm, you know, probably better than most, but not good enough to make a living, or do any of these, you know, take any of these other things off of my plate with.
Yeah. No, and that's, I think CrossFit's cool because it gives you that. And I've always said this because uh, I haven't been a fan of how they handle things. And like, I'm not a fan of like the coaching of it sometimes in the gyms, but like,
Right.
I think the way you describe it is like CrossFit opens those doors. And I think it's always cool for people to kind of like go through even if it's just like once for a little bit, like a process of CrossFit, just because there's so many skills involved and you get to like pick that out and like you get to see what you like. It almost gives you like like I don't even like a buffet of like all the movements, and then like after that you can kind of be like, yeah, well, like I like gymnastics, or I really like weightlifting, or I really like running, which I don't know who actually really likes running, but they get to do that stuff. But and your journey into weightlifting, are you now competing at all, or are you going to be competing? Is that like the goal, or is this just like a more of like a, because we'll get to that stuff, but you have like courses now on that stuff, but um
Yeah.
what's your goal with weightlifting?
Yeah, so I compete in weightlifting. I haven't, it's been, like you said, it's been a weird fucking year for a lot of reasons. So the last competition I did, well, I'll take a step back, because after I transitioned out of CrossFit, I started competing, and I actually was competing on the local level, or at the local level, in weightlifting when I was still doing CrossFit.
Sure.
Um, but I just started to take it a little more seriously once I stopped competing in CrossFit. So actually, the first year after I stopped CrossFit, I qualified for nationals as a 77 kilo lifter. I didn't get to compete that year because actually my best friend got married the same day that I was set to compete. So I'll hate him forever for that. But just kidding, Shane. He's not going to listen. But so I started competing almost immediately after I stopped competing in CrossFit, because I just, like I said, I've always had those competitive urges towards strength sports. And then, so training was going incredibly well the rest of that year. But then later that year, they changed the weight classes. So I'm like perfect build for a 77 kilo lifter. I usually sit 78, 79 kilos, and that's where I like to train at. So they like kind of split the difference for me, where the two weight classes I would be realistically able to compete in would be a 73 kilo weight class, or in the 81 kilo weight class. And it's just hard for me to gain weight.
Mhm.
It's, you know, I put a lot of time and energy and effort into it, and it just takes a long time for me to put on weight. So if I were to lift at 81, I would be coming in a little bit light. and competing with guys that were probably at 89 kilos and cutting down. So I just knew I wouldn't be as competitive there. So actually, my first meet after they changed the weight classes was as an 81, and I lifted relatively well. But I knew I wouldn't be as competitive as I wanted to be if I were competing at that weight class. So I decided to cut down to 73. So it was like a 6 kilo weight cut. So it's probably like 14 or so pounds
Yeah.
or 13 pounds.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. I hope you can't hear that.
No, 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 you're good. You're good.
Okay. So then I cut down. My first meet, I had a rough cut. I missed the national qualifying total by like one attempt. It was my last clean and jerk. Um, so that kind of messed me up for that season, that training season, because it was close to the cutoff for nationals.
Yeah.
So I had to then go back and compete like a month later. I hit the total I needed to, but that was at that point, like the way the competition season went and the way that I chose to do these meets. It really messed me up by not hitting it at that first meet. So then I had nationals like a month later. So
Oh,
instead of being able to like peak for a meet and then kind of get my weight up, train through and peak for nationals, I kind of had to peak for a meet, stay peaked, do another meet, stay peaked, and then do nationals.
yeah.
Um, so I ended up, I think I got eighth place at nationals of the 73 that year. Um, and then I competed back in the Arnold last March. I ended up I got third place on the day. The guy that got first place in that competition, he actually got popped on his drug test for THC.
Oh, really?
THC in competition. So that means that this guy was like high as fuck and he snatched like 120, clean and jerked like 150.
Damn.
So that guy's clearly a legend. But then COVID hit and everything went online and I just haven't competed since then.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's gonna be a lot. I can't imagine doing this stuff high. I can't even imagine. Um,
I know.
but cool. I mean, that's yeah, and like, um, is the like, what are the like? Are there any upcoming competitions, or like, is there anything that's like, you know, because things are like starting to kind of lighten up, depending on where you are? I know you're in California, so I don't know. I don't know if it's lighting up there, but like, is there anything coming up?
Yeah, so in California, things are still pretty locked down. There's
Yeah.
been probably 2 meets over the last 6 months that have been in person, and it's that it seems fine. It's like a similar to what a normal meet would be like. It just seems like it's a little bit slower pace. So like cleaning the bar and shit
Yeah.
um, in between lifters. So, but honestly, I haven't been um focused too much on competing just because of everything that's been going on.
Yeah.
I kind of peaked as if I were going to compete at nationals this past year, but uh it was supposed to be in Atlanta in December, but they moved it online and it just
Yeah. Just
um
throws you off.
it's just not the same. So I didn't compete then. So I'm in a little bit of an off season now where I'm just really working on being healthy and just building up some higher end strength so that once kind of things normalize, I can hopefully get back into the swing of things.
Awesome.
Um, I'll always love competing, so I'll try and get on that national stage as long as I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you got other stuff to worry about, like pre-script, because you guys are crushing it. And I want to talk a little bit about your background, because I know, you know, I know you guys and Jordan started this together, and like I'm
Mhm.
interested more about like your come up through this and how you've kind of positioned yourself, and then we'll get into the other stuff, but we can start there. So your kind of starting point from Prescript, and how you got involved with it, and then go from there.
Yeah. Kind of the origin story is so Shal and I went to chiropractic school. We were in the same class and graduated together. I met him in the fall of 2012. We went through school together and we kind of quickly realized that we were like the only real meatheads in the class. So we kind of hung out together, kind of just had that mutual understanding, mutual respect. Like, oh, you do this, me too. Like cool. Um, and just after school, after we graduated, we kind of went through this similar experience where he was inside of Boss Barbell Powerlifting Gym. I was here at CrossFit Gym. I was still competing in CrossFit at the time, and we decided to open up our own practices right out of school in the gym. So basically, our business models were very similar. So we would just kind of get together like once or twice a month, and we would talk business. We would talk about what we're doing, like what's working, what's not. Sometimes it would just be like, let's go squat or whatever. And just talk about how much we hate our life choices up until this point. Um,
Those
with
conversations are
this,
always fun.
yeah, right. What they call like a quarter life crisis kind of
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
Um, but with that, we were very aligned with a lot of things that we were doing, and chiropractic school is very expensive. So we were just thinking about these ways, like what we could do to put ourselves in better position to pay off our loans and make a living and that sort of stuff. And we just kind of aligned on the same thought that we needed to be doing something online, because first off, chiropractic in itself is just not a good business model, and the successful chiropractors are the ones that are kind of going over the top and doing maybe a disservice to pay it. This is all very biased in my opinion, but there's a lot, that's not everyone. There's a lot of chiropractors that are kind of run these scams where they're just like, oh yeah, you need to come in 3 times a week for the rest of your life, and it's paying off their $4 million home mortgage and all this shit. But I think the business model in itself, it's just inherently, if you get people better, they're not going to come to you. So the better you are at your job, the less you're going to see your patients. So it almost has to be like this constantly churning thing where I feel like I'm pretty good at my job and I have my patient's best interest at heart. So the way that I get patients is by having people recognize that and refer people in, because I'm not going to hold on to this person that doesn't need to see me for this 5-minute adjustment 3 times a week for the rest of their life. So just because we had this kind of I don't know, just I feel a more complete outlook because I'm coming from a strength and conditioning world. I've been in personal training for probably since I was like 18, so like 12 years now. So that's just my bias and all this stuff, is that it should be about health as opposed to being about dependency almost. So with that, it was hard to get a practice going with that business model where I'm like, you don't need to come back. Like just do these exercises and you'll be fine. So that's kind of, we both had this very similar approach and very similar mindset to what practice should be and what our ideals were. And that's kind of how Pre-Script was born. And to be honest, we didn't know what it was at inception. What it's grown into is much larger and much cooler than what we ever thought it would be. But at first we're like, we don't really know what to do online. So it just started off, literally, we set up a Shopify store. We like started a podcast and started posting about it on our social media channels. And then it's like, we have these customers coming to us, and basically what we're doing is we just moved our practice online. It's like, okay, fill out this intake form. I'm going to send you that stretches, exercises that you should be doing, how you should be doing them in accordance with your training split. And we were like, probably working ourselves into the ground at that point. Like it's the amount of work for the amount we were charging was just like, it was like nothing.
Well, I remember your first, so I've been following you guys for a while, and like I remember some of your first, and I don't know if you're talking about your programs that you guys wrote, but I got like one of the earlier versions of like the the lower body reset. It was only like $50, but I was like, Jesus, this is really fucking good for $50. Like,
did you get like a spreadsheet emailed to you?
No.
Okay.
No. I think you guys had the app by that point.
Okay.
I can't remember, but it might have been the app. Actually, no, I think I might have got the spreadsheet because I think it was right before you guys got the app, and then like shortly after that, the app came out.
Yeah, so that's how we started out. It was all spreadsheets, and it was like we had this Google calendar that the two of us shared, and there would be like 30 fucking people on Monday, and we have to go through and send them their week of the program, all 30 people, and then do the same thing on Tuesday, and then do it on Wednesday. And it was just like the hours kept adding up the more people we would get, but the dollar amount didn't grow in proportion. So there was this time, like it was probably about 2 years like down that road, And that's when RX Radio started to kind of take off, just because we had done other podcasts and things like that. Um, but that's when we met our counterparts, and so there's four of us that kind of make all the decisions and run the company. We have me and Shallow, of course, and then behind the scenes more so is Clem and Mark. Clem does all of our operations and outlines that. Mark does all of our tech stuff, and they're like, you guys have a really good idea here, but you're fucking idiots. Like, the way you're running this is not going to work. It's not going to scale. So
Well, it's not
they
weightlifting. You can't just lift it. You can't just keep-
exactly, exactly. So that was, and we didn't know the things. Obviously, we didn't know the things that we know now at that point, and we're like a little bit hesitant about it. But we're like, should we bring them on? Like, I don't know. Like, what do people in business do?
Mhm.
But thankfully, we did. And they have a lot more experience in these things. Both of them have PhDs. They're incredibly smart. Um, and somehow they ended up with us, but they basically, over the next like 6 months, automated everything that we were doing, so
Mhm.
it cleared up so much of our time, so that then Shallow and I could focus on what we were good at. And that's like, that's this stuff, like the exercise stuff. We can do this in our sleep. Like,
Yeah.
we understand it, we enjoy it. So I don't enjoy filling out spreadsheets and emailing them to 30 different people.
Yeah.
So that's just a waste of time at that point. It's me spending my time that could be much more valuable in another area doing busy work.
Yeah.
So they offloaded all of that from us, so that, and then over that the next couple of years, we kind of, Shao did a lot of traveling. He got in with Ben Pukalski and did some seminars with him, and started going and doing his own stuff, and through that, just really got the Prescript name out there. And then when the pandemic hit, the beginning of last year, it forced everyone online, which was the direction that we were heading anyway. So we, honestly, the timing couldn't have been any better for us to have the systems in place that we did, that were like, well, all right, we do the same thing, we just do the same thing online now. So we kind of switched over, at a time that was really advantageous for us to not have to travel, or shallow, to have a home base, and everything kind of comes to us. And it really made the process really efficient, and opened up the doors for us to start putting out these other courses, like the weightlifting course that I just recently put out. Killian, he'll have a course that starts this coming week.
Yep.
And um, and really just start to get our chunk of the space and say, okay, this is it, this is what we do. Which is, it took 5 years for us to get to this point, that now we understand what we are as a company. But I think that's how it has to happen. It was a very kind of organic progression, for us to get here, and we held true to the values and the principles that we wanted to portray, and the stuff that we wanted to put out there. And I think people really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, outside looking in, from my perspective, you guys were always like educational. So I think it was just a matter of time before you actually got there. Because I remember the first couple times I listened to like RX Radio. And I don't remember how early I found you guys. I don't specifically remember when I found you guys, but I remember when I did find you guys, I was like, "What the fuck, dude?" Like these, and like Jordan would just go on the rants, and like Shallow would go on the rants, and you guys would both have your moments. But like it was like a lot of stuff that was like refreshing to hear, and like look, like I learned a ton. Um, and like Jordan would always use big words, and I would like get confused sometimes, even like being in the space myself, and like having the information, and just like he would go on those like don't those things he called like the don't blink rants, and he just like goes for it. And then like you guys have your back and forth, but like I think as soon as I found out that you guys were introducing like the courses, I got excited because of how long I've been following you guys, and like how much I've already gotten from you. So like hearing that you guys were like introducing this like specific actual like breakdown of how you do things was awesome. And I kind of want to, obviously if you can break down, the PSL one just a little bit, and then your course that you do, which is the Olympic weightlifting, which we can get to after, but like, you know, what the idea was starting, and then, where your guys' goal is to take that in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Prescript level one, for anyone that doesn't know or hasn't taken, it's a 16-week completely online course. And basically, it's, I mean, Shallow's brainchild. It's um, so the first 8 weeks goes through basically, it's a breakdown of anatomy and biochemistry and kind of muscle function through body region. So it's almost split into shoulder, hip, and spine, and it talks about how these three areas kind of work in, I don't want to say isolation, but how a shoulder works, and then how a shoulder integrates with the bigger picture with the rest of the body. Same thing for the hip, same thing with the trunk or the spine or the core, whatever you want to call it. Um, and really what it focuses on is how these things are meant to function and defining function around these things, so that when we see dysfunction or people that have issues in these regions, we can relate it back to and kind of superimpose that image of function over that, so that then you can start to make these inferences and draw a comparison and figure out piece by piece what the issue might be and what the road to correction is. So that's the first 8 weeks. And then after that, it goes into more what I look at as a rehab scope, or what as just because of my background, the clientele that I work with. But it's perfectly applies to like the bodybuilding hypertrophy um, kind of training methodologies of muscle action versus muscle function. And again, breaking that down into how specific muscles behave, or in certain positions or at different joint angles, and how you can use that to better regiment your training, or make it so that there's not as many redundancies, or work to rehab injuries, or just work to be better, well-rounded with your training. And then it kind of ties it all together through the lens of how you can relate that to yourself and your clients. And over the past year, a portion that we added to that now is our pre-script lab sections. So we have currently we have three of those per week. So it's 3 hour long sessions. One is Shallow and Killian, one is James McIntosh, and one is myself. And basically what you can do is it's kind of, it's almost like this, right? It's a video call where you can go through, have a conversation with not just us, but the rest of the coaches in that course, which has been probably one of the biggest things that's helped me grow as a practitioner and as a coach over the past year, is talking to, I get to talk to 20 to 30 different strength coaches that are high level in their field, whether they're working with college athletes, professional athletes, bodybuilders, weightlifters,
I think that was the
rowers.
coolest thing for me. It was like after the course, I made
Absolutely.
like friends that I've obviously never met in person, but like I made friends that
Yeah.
like I get to go to now and like, talk to and bounce ideas off of business and, fitness. And it's been like one of the coolest things, but continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really become an important part of the bigger picture of where we're heading, is that kind of community aspect, is that we're not necessarily limited by our geographical location, to build this internet community of people that want to become better in their field and have this progressive way of thinking. And I love to see that it's a good mix of, we have chiropractors, we have PTs, we have a lot of students, so people that are going through those programs, or kinesiology programs, and then we have people that are currently personal trainers, people that are working, maybe with professional athletes. Then we have people that are interested in getting into personal training. So it's really a whole spectrum of people, and then with that becomes just a different lens that you can look through from each one of those people. Or I learn more from the questions that get asked than I do like some of the answers sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the big thing that I really enjoy about those is getting to see other people's thought process and how they would approach a situation, as opposed to kind of the final product of, this is the answer to the question. It's how did we get to that answer, and that's what's really cool. And it can be done in kind of a collaborative way between everyone. So that's something that I think it adds a lot of value to the courses, and I know I personally have gotten a ton of value out of that also.
No, yeah. And like, I think that the best way for me was like or describe it was like the first 8 weeks was like theoretical. It was more about like the understanding of everything, and then like Jordan actually, I didn't get to have like anything from you or Killian when I took it. It was just Jordan. But it was just, practicality at the end was just like how you actually like use all this information and put it
Mhm.
into like your programming, how you deal with a client in that regard, how you actually like understand tension and obviously. And I was thinking the other day, I saw people are starting to make memes of shallow, and I was like, that's when you know you're getting there. And like you're getting memes made of you. Someone made the I see dead people, but they put him in a bed and it said I see vector or I see what was the word? Like graphs or something like that. I forgot what it was.
Resistance profiles,
Yeah,
strength
something like
curves.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I think you guys are definitely. I can't wait to do the second and hopefully get all the way up to the fourth because I love what you guys are doing. But so taking like the PSL one, and if you haven't yet, I definitely recommend it if you're in this field. But transitioning for your own into Olympic weightlifting course. What were some of the things that you took from that and then implemented here, and then the things that you kind of like changed and tweaked to make it your own?
Yeah, the big thing is that Olympic weightlifting, it's very skill based, and it's kind of self-selecting in terms of the audience that chooses to or gravitates to do it. So what I mean by that is it takes a high degree of range of motion, joint stability. It's very demanding on the body, and some people they just don't want to do it because of that. Maybe they're not apt to being able to get into these positions, or it's just something that doesn't suit them in terms of interest. But what I have found is that, again, like kind of like you said earlier, is that CrossFit just like it throws a bunch of shit at a wall and you see what sticks, right? Like the people that we will send to the Olympics in now 2021, I think all of them have, besides maybe Robles if she goes, have found weightlifting through CrossFit,
Mm,
which is fucking crazy.
yeah.
So basically what it's doing is just introducing this thing to people that might not have known it would have existed other than that. So my idea in making this course is I've seen CrossFit, I've lived in that world, I've seen what it does to people in terms of creating them as weightlifters, and a lot of times a lot of things get skipped. So learning weightlifting as weightlifting and learning weightlifting through CrossFit are two completely different worlds. So a lot of what I do is I work with CrossFitters to make them better weightlifters. Um, so people that have been exposed to it through CrossFit, but have this interest in it as a sport, or at becoming better at weightlifting, the snatch, the clean, the jerk specifically. And the fundamental difference between that and what they do in CrossFit is CrossFit, it's not necessarily about quality. It's about getting from point A to point B in terms of, what competition
How you
is,
get
or
there doesn't
or
matter.
yeah, exactly. When it's completely the opposite, when you look at a sport of weightlifting, it's all about how you execute. You People will train for, you know, say they're going to the Olympics or they're trying to go to the Olympics. They'll train for 4 years for six lifts, right? That's if
That's
each
actually, yeah,
lift is
that's
10 to
actually,
15 seconds on the platform, that's like 2 minutes in competition that you're training 4 years for. So it's all about execution in the moment and being able to recreate that time after time after time. So with that, my big goal in introducing this course, and I've taken all the USAW educational stuff, I've done the courses, I know what they have to offer, and I'm not anything against USA weightlifting or any of the educational material that they provide, but I don't think it teaches a lot of the very important things in terms of learning about your body and learning how to progress an athlete, um, with the goal of long-term progression,
yeah.
right? So what I see a lot, and what you kind of see in a lot of these sports is, in a lot of countries throughout the world, is there's these kind of large government funded programs, where they'll be working with this huge funnel where they're starting maybe with 10,000 athletes, and it funnels down to their eight men or six women or whatever they have, however many weight classes there are, that they'll send to the Olympics. And the idea there is it's just a numbers game at that point. The people that are going to excel are going to excel. It's not about the system refining these people. It's about finding the people that are apt to do this thing. And in America, it's just, we don't really have that. And I have in the past, and I currently am working with coaches that have this kind of system set up for them. So a coach that I work with he runs a high school program, and as a physical fitness class, they get credit for doing weightlifting. So he gets access to, I don't know, there's probably like 1,000 students in the high school, or maybe more. He gets access to all these students and throws them through the funnel. And the ones that are excelling at it, you get put over here. You're a weightlifter now. The other ones are like, okay, this is your strength and conditioning for football, for track, whatever it is. But with that, the system, the part about that system is that, yes, the people that excel at weightlifting are going to continue to excel, and they're going to separate themselves as an outlier from the rest of the pack. But if you don't know how to keep that athlete healthy and keep them developing over a long period of time, then they're just going to burn out, or they're going to have injuries, or they're going to find these things that are going to put a ceiling on, or a cap on, what their performance will be later down the line, especially with younger athletes. So my intention in creating this course is that we can now take this material and give everyone access to it, that this is a way that you should be striving to progress through this sport. And it gives you concrete things that if you can do this, then you have the requisite range of motion, you have the requisite stability that you will need to be able to complete a snatch safely. And now you have the green light to go ahead and start to learn the skill of the snatch. Where a lot of times it's kind of flipped. It's like, okay, this is the snatch. If you can snatch, then you're good. If not, we're going to continue to snatch until it looks better, which
Yeah.
isn't, it's not necessarily what we need to do. Is we need to work on your shoulder function. We need to make sure you have enough extension in your thoracic spine. We need to make sure that you can get into a stable front squat position before we start to clean. And there's all these issues that can arise from not being able to fulfill that prerequisite criteria of mobility and stability, and just motor control, that we would never have to take care of these things if these people went through this process the right way from the start.
Yeah.
So that's the lens that I'm looking at in putting this educational material out there, because there's now this greater need and this greater want for the sport of weightlifting.
Yeah.
So my part in that is I want people to be able to go through and be able to learn this in a way that's going to allow them to do this for the rest of their life.
Yeah. And I think that weightlifting is one of those sports, along with like, you know, some of the, there's sports out there that are like, it's almost like hard to get into unless you know, like I said, like CrossFit has helped it, but I think weightlifting is one of those things that, like, here it's been underdeveloped, like you just said, and we've like lacked in it to a certain degree because of that. And I've always loved it, and like I found it through CrossFit,
Hmm.
and it comes up with understanding that, like, I wish I had that in high school too. And I think a lot of us now are like, damn, I wish I fucking had that in high school, or that was extra credit, because whatever. And that stuff helps. And it's crazy to think that, you see the progression of that, and understanding to get into it, being younger and starting that sport, like anything else, is that much easier. And it helps you get rid of those shoulder problems or those hip problems, because you're starting off so, young, and it's so much easier to fix those problems at that age, that
Hmm.
it's good. And so is with the Olympic weightlifting course, is that is that every 6 weeks too, or is that something else that like you do that differently?
Yeah, so this one's slightly different. We're trying to move towards this model, but it's all automated basically.
Okay,
So you
cool.
could sign up literally whenever you want to. It's a 5 week. There's 5 weeks of content, and then the 6 week is an exam. So it's all do at your own pace. As long as you have a Prescript account with us, you'll have access to the material. So it's not like we give it to you and then take it away. It's something that you could then reference back to. And if you have an athlete that might fall into this category and you need a refresher, you can go and look at the material. And then with that, you also get access to all of our labs with all of our coaches. So in case there's any questions or things that a lot of times what we end up doing in the lab sections is case studies. So if there's a certain client or population that you're working with that, is posing a certain issue, then a lot of times we can go through that and sort that out pertaining to how it might apply to that athletes or populations you're working with.
Cool. All right, awesome. So what's kind of next for Prescript and you, and just like in general? What's going on next? Anything coming up? Anything in terms of like other certifications or fitness in general?
Yeah, so I mean, we're continually looking to expand our course offering and expand what we are doing and our reach within the fitness world, if you could call it that. The major thing is we have the Prescript Level 2
Yeah.
coming up that should be available in March of this year. Shell is putting out a manual for the Prescript Level 1, so that should be available probably around the same time. As I mentioned earlier, we have the skill acquisition course with Killian kicking off end of January. Um, and then that's the near future for us. We're coming up with some cool options for people that haven't taken the courses but have some interest in finding out what we are as a company or what we do, to hop in on some of our lab sections. So we're trying to really expand that and grow the community through that. We just brought on, if you guys have been in the labs, you know who James Thayer is. So we just brought him on as kind of a moderator to add into the lab section. So that should be pretty exciting. We have our barbell course, powerlifting course with Shallow and Stu. A lot of really good content, a ton of experience between those two, some strong fucking dudes. So that's kind of our current lineup. We definitely have some more things in the works, but in the next probably 6 months, that's what you'll see out of us. In terms of myself, I don't fucking know, man.
Just do it.
Make it through 21.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for level 2. Hold me a spot. I'm gonna ask all three of you, hold me a spot early so I don't have to wait list. But yeah, I mean, you guys are doing a great job. I'm excited I got to talk to you finally, because I haven't really, I've listened to you enough, but I haven't gotten to like sit down like I have with Jordan or Killian. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you coming on. Shout out the Instagram and the other stuff so they can come find you there.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. You can find me, let's go business Instagram is the Functional Chiro. My personal is Red, White, and Jordan, no H in white. If you guys are in the Santa Clara, California area, you guys can find me. Just go to thefunctionalchiro.com. I do online consults for coaches, for clients, injury consults, that kind of stuff. So if you guys are interested, feel free to reach out. Jordan at the Functional Chiro is my email.com, yeah, if you have any questions about the Prescript stuff, hit us at info@prescript.com. If you want to check it out, the website's just www.pre-script.com. That has all of our course offerings on it.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions, obviously you can shoot them my way too. I'll answer them and send you to either one of these guys or hook you up in some way. But yeah, Jordan, I appreciate you coming on. It was a pleasure, and talk again soon. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you listened this far, hopefully you did. But we'll talk to you guys next week. Peace.